Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. When Gary wrote that song a few years ago, we were talking about where to put it in, and you sort of have to be talking about this very topic, about how the human and the divine come together, because you're 100% divine and you're 100% human, and that's never going to change. And sometimes we get the idea that, well, when I get spiritual enough, I'll stop being so dang human. So, I'm here to dispel any myths you might have about that today. Two women were at jury duty, passing the time, waiting to be called, and they started talking. Turns out they're both moms of only children, boys. And the first one just says, well, I don't know about you, but we're really having a lot of trouble with our son. He's entered a strange phase, very rebellious. I think he's drinking. I know he's smoking. He comes home late after curfew, and we just don't quite know what to do with him. And then, how was your son? And the other mom says, perfect. Perfect? You mean he doesn't smoke? No. He doesn't drink? No. He doesn't come in late? No. Well, we're just hoping that our son outgrows it. He's 17. How old is your son? 6 months. Perfect. Just you wait. I was talking to Reverends Jean Marie and Karen yesterday. We had a wonderful workshop, Healing the Heart of America. It's an initiative that, those of you who were there, powerful. Healing the Heart of America is the place in our church community here where we're seeking to talk about the difficult things about that human-divine crossroads. And Dr. Jill Carroll was here, and she did a 3-hour workshop on racism in our country and what we can do to be a part of the solution of that. It was disturbing in a really good way, and that our perceptions were challenged, and we were asked to look at things and to be different. It was really powerful. And what I told Karen and Jean Marie is that it feels to me like there's a polarity at work here in Unity of Houston and what we offer, what we teach. That we have a transformative teaching. We teach this power of the creativity of our thought, that if you change your thinking, you can change your life, that there is a law that responds to our thought, and we can redirect and reshape and reform the very conditions of our lives. This is what we have been. This is the foundation of our teaching. It's called metaphysical Christianity. This is what we believe, that beneath all of the surface conditions, there are spiritual principles. And who here would like to change the conditions of your life? Who would like to have greater freedom in your financial life? Who would like to have greater love and connection in your relations? Who would like to have greater well-being and strength in your body? Who would like to have greater peace of mind? Go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to have those things. Come back in 2 weeks. We'll be talking about that. As we begin Adventures in Faith, we're going deep into that teaching of metaphysical transformation using spiritual power, lessons in truth. You'll be transformed by the truth. Today, it's a prophylactic message. Let me explain what I mean by that. If we spend all of our time focusing on our responsibility and the creative power for us to change our thoughts, we can get the wrong idea that at some point we're going to get perfect. And so today's message is to ground and create a safe container for your humanity. Because no matter, even when you do all those things I just talked about, you create all those changes in your life, you're still going to have problems. Challenges, opportunities for growth. Now, at a higher level. The problems that used to plague me and follow me, I don't have those anymore. I've got problems of a higher order. Look at me. And they're challenging me and they're growing me. That's the nature of it. So we want to weave back and forth between this idea of spiritual perfection and the transformative power of our teaching and creating a soft and compassionate space for our human experience. Are you okay with that? So today I've titled this message, The Pain of Perfectionism. And to begin with, I just want to tell you what perfectionism is not. There are some people that just seem to be pre-wired towards order. They just like things to be lined up. They just have a gift for details. So I've heard it said that there are two kinds of people in this world. There are people that believe that if a thing is worth doing, it's... Thank you for identifying yourselves. It's worth doing right. And then the rest of us, the other kind of people who believe that sometimes slipshod is good enough. That's really talking about temperament. That's not right or wrong. That's just some people are better at details and some people are better at creativity, I like to say. That's okay. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm speaking of today, perfectionism, it's really a spiritual malady. It's trying to, how do I want to say this? It starts with a false belief of who and what we are, and we think that if we can just control the conditions and present the right image to the world, then no one will see who we really are. That's what I want to speak to today. Our basis for this is Brené Brown's book, The Gifts of Imperfection, and here's what she says. Perfectionism is not the same thing as striving to be your best. Perfectionism is not about healthy achievement and growth. Perfectionism is the belief that if we live perfect, look perfect, and act perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. It's a shield. Perfectionism is a 20-ton shield that we lug around thinking it will protect us, when in fact, it's the thing that's really preventing us from taking flight. If you know Dr. Brené Brown's work, she's a U of H, University of Houston, a social work professor here, and she kind of was launched onto the world platform with a TED Talk she did a few years ago on vulnerability and shame. She's done a lot for us in the world of understanding that this need to look perfect and make everybody think that we've got it all together is actually holding us back from the true joy and fulfillment of life. That our true gift in coming to life is being human, allowing ourselves to just be that. In this book, she also quotes the work of Christine Neff, who is a University of Texas professor, who all of her work is around self-compassion. That if we can create a space where we can hold our humanity with tenderness and love instead of judgment and shame. That's what we're about today. I had several people after the first service who came through the line and said, I did not think I was a perfectionist until you told me I was. Most of us have that voice in our head that criticizes and shames and judges. So I'd like to talk for a moment about the origin of that inner critic. And if it's not one thing, it's your mother. It's a family of origin issue. Parents are given an impossible job. How to correct, discipline, and guide your children without crushing their little spirits. Yeah, somebody once told me that, your mom knows how to push your buttons because she installed them. When a parent is seeking to correct a child, and let's just face it, a lot of parents are seeking to correct their children when they are really at their wits' end at times. And what they're hoping to do is correct a behavior that will help the child go through life better, right? Give them tools to succeed and get along. And sometimes that means, no, you made a mistake. But sometimes what the child hears is, I am a mistake. Not I've done something wrong, but I am something wrong. I've kind of put this together from different places I've heard it, but I think about the three definitions I'd like to offer you for regret, for guilt, and for shame. Regret means looking at the past, I would like to have done that differently. This is normal and healthy. This is self-reflective behavior to go, well, given him a chance, I wouldn't do it that way again. I can have some regret around that. Unless you're Frank Sinatra. Is that My Way? Do you remember that song? Regrets, I have a few, but then again, too few to mention. Guilt. What is guilt? What it really means is I did something wrong. And this can be healthy and productive if we move from it to correct our behavior and to make amends. It's not a bad thing. That feeling of like, wow, I really made a mistake. That discomfort, that discord that we feel inside, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But shame is the place where we've taken the correction of life and we have interpreted it as that I am flawed at a fundamental level. There is something wrong with me. Not I made a mistake, but I am a mistake. And what perfectionism is, it's an attempt to keep people from seeing those places where we feel that we are a mistake. And it doesn't work. Another thing that you might find has happened in your journey of criticism and judgment is that you find yourself doing the very thing that was so painful to you when someone did it to you. I was speaking last week with a couple that are getting ready to get married, and I've been working with them a little bit. And she was sharing with me that she finally got that the reason she's being so hard on her, she noticed the way she's being hard on her fiance is an exact reflection of the way her mother was hard on her. The thing that was so painful, that criticism and judgment, she's doing it. And how hard that is. But to be able to face it and speak about it is the key. To be able to admit that we're human and we do these things is the opening that will then allow us to do that healing work. Somebody told me in the 12-step rooms that the best I was ever going to be was human. And it was heartbreaking to me. That's not the message I wanted to hear at first. Later on, it became very encouraging. And I hope to give you some of that encouragement. I've shared that when I did my first 4th and 5th step in the 12 steps, that's where you do a personal moral inventory and you share it with another. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying to make a list of all the things you've ever done wrong and then tell somebody about it. Horrible. Necessary and healing. The sponsor's job, or the person who hears the 5th step, is to point out the character defects, that they're the patterns of behavior. And I don't like that language much because nobody is defective. But you understand what it's meaning. It's just that there are things, that patterns of behavior we picked up that are not healthy. And it's not who we are. So I'm sharing my sordid tale of what a terrible person I am, and I'm expecting my sponsor to go, yes, you sure are, criticize, judge, because that's what I'm doing to myself, right? But that's not what she does. The first thing she says is like, well, I can already identify one of your character defects. Maybe your chief character defect is that you're a perfectionist. And I looked at her like she had two heads. I was like, no, that can't be right, because I've never done anything perfectly my entire life. And she just does this. Right on. That was the first time I had an inkling that I was doing this thing Brene Brown described so well. Seeking to be perfect so that no one would see that I was really flawed. So I'll tell you that I did have it together for about 3 years when I had them all fooled. I'm going to give you a little bit of history of my family. I have a wonderful family. I really love them. And I will say that there wasn't violence in our home. I always knew that I was loved, and I always knew it was a safe place to be. And not everybody in this room has had that. So I'm not bragging. I'm just grateful that I had that experience. But we were dysfunctional in some very interesting ways. There's a thing in the Gott family that said that most of the men end up being drunks or preachers, and some get lucky enough to be both. Hopefully not simultaneously, but in the history of life. And when I was an early teenager, my older brother, in the dysfunctional family model that John Bradshaw introduced to the world in the 80s, my older brother was the scapegoat. He was the one that was acting out the unhealed family energy. And so he became rebellious and got into drugs and alcohol, and it was causing all kinds of havoc in the family. I don't think he did it consciously. It was just that's what happens in these families when things are not talked about and dealt with. And then my job, which was handed to me as if it was on a piece of paper, and it wasn't, and I didn't read it, I just knew it. My job was to be perfect. That's what they needed from me. And that's what Bradshaw beautifully predicts. That when you have the scapegoat, you have the one causing all the drama, another one will say, I'm the perfect child. That's what I did from the time I was 13 till about 19, really. Had a couple of years in there that were interesting. And so I became class president. I was student council president, valedictorian. Anything that could be achieved, I would achieve it to go say, see, I'm good. All's good here. And the approval that I got was like a drug. And I was kind of addicted to that. Just like that's where my identity was. The one who gets it right, gets praise. All of the girls' mothers wanted me to date their daughters. We'll more about that in a minute. Some of you know where this story is going. It also developed into my spiritual life that my family we had two roots in fundamental Christianity. There was our country Methodist, which was not the liberal big city Methodist. You all know about it. It was like very fundamentalist and hardline. That's where we went to church. And then there was the Pentecostal branch on my dad's side. The holy rollers, the tongue talkers. Yeah, I had all that. And I'm going to tell you though, I had a couple of experiences, direct experiences of the divine in that Pentecostal church that really sustained me through the dark night of my soul. A direct experience of God's love that kept me here. So I became this perfect child and also a very holy, zealous young man. One time I was taking her somewhere in my car. I had the old family car, was my car. It was a 1976 Chevy Malibu Classic. Had an AM radio. And she gets in, I start the car, and the radio is on, and it's tuned to the top 40 station in Tulsa. And my mom looked at me with such disappointment. And she said, you know you shouldn't be listening to that. And I just was covered in shame. Because I should only listen to Christian music. And the thing that made that moment so painful was that I had a secret. And I thought, if this is the level of disapproval and shame I'm getting for listening to Casey and the Sunshine Band, what would she do if she found out I was gay? And so the wall went up even more. The barrier against anyone knowing who I really was just necessary. I would not have a place in this world if people found out. I went to the Christian school that everybody thought I should go to, that I thought I should go to show everybody what a good Christian I was there. And there were other boys there who were trying to not be gay. And so that was an interesting thing. Not going to talk about that, but just it was when I was 19 that I finally began to talk about my sexual orientation. And I did everything I could that I would have been taught. That I thought it was wrong. It was a choice. And so I actually drove overnight to have a minister try and cast the demon of homosexuality out of me. Didn't work. I went to one of those conversion therapy support groups. Didn't work. And so finally, after I graduated from college and kind of started a life of my own, I just said, God, you're going to have to handle this. I don't know what to do. But I carried the shame of that And I'm absolutely sure that that was part of the driver of my alcoholism that I then plunged into in my 20s. Just full of shame and a feeling of unworthiness. And then in my late 20s, I had an amazing year. I'm not a numerology guy, but something about those cycles of 7 years seems to show up in my life a lot. And when I was 28, I found the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I also was minding my own business, singing and playing in a gay piano bar, and a preacher comes in and asks me to sing at his church. And I thought, what kind of a church sends their minister into a gay piano bar to find someone to come sing for them? And I thought, I might have found my church. And so I did. It was not a unity church. It was a church of religious science, Centers for Spiritual Living. And through those two spiritual paths and communities, I began to heal and began to unwind the false identities and the fear of being found out, all of that need to be perfect, because I so clearly wasn't perfect. But I began to do the deeper work of healing. I'm still not perfect. And that's a surprise? I don't know. Didn't mean to surprise you with that. I still make mistakes. I still do things. I wish I had done it better. In the 2 years that I've been senior minister now, people have left the church because of me. And that pains me. And I'm here today to tell you that I'm doing the best I can. And I'm not, well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's... Sit down. That's not why I said that. My little achiever is going, good, we got him fooled. But I will tell you that what I want to model for you as your spiritual leader is that you get to be real. You get to make mistakes. And if we can build a spiritual community that can hold both of these things, this possibility of spiritual transformation by applying and practicing spiritual principles, and where we get to do it, where we're allowed to make mistakes and love each other through it, we can change the world with that. That's what we're about. A few years later, actually not that long, I was into that journey, and I was at the Agape Center in Los Angeles. And I was at a music symposium. That's where I met David York for the very first time. I believe it was in 2001. It was right around then, so a long time ago. And I had an experience, and I've shared it before, but it feels like this is the story that wants to be told today, is I was newly sober. I just recorded but not released my first album of spiritual music. Felt like there was a lot of something is about to happen here. And we're doing a visioning with Michael Beckwith, and there are about 200 of us in the sanctuary at Agape, and Ricky is playing the piano and just creating this beautiful sacred space. And Michael asks the questions of his visioning process. The first one is, what is the high vision? What is God's idea of your music ministry? And the process, the practice is this. We've done a lot of it here, is that then we listen, as we did in the meditation today. Are there messages that from my higher self, from God, that will guide me and direct me in this? And I'm ready. I'm open. I'm willing to receive something powerful and transforming. And what I heard was this. Who are you kidding? You get your stuff together. You're never going to be Ricky Byers. And I was crushed. I knew that voice. It actually wasn't my mom, it's me. That critic that I had used to keep myself small and in line for my whole life. I thought I had healed it. I thought I had done my fifth step. I thought I was complete. I thought I was over it. And here in this moment of possibility and transformation, my inner critic is smashing me to the ground. But I had a moment of grace that changed everything. You see, a few weeks earlier, my friend Lee had given a talk at my church in Dallas, and he misquoted Theodore Roosevelt. He said, Comparison is the death of joy. What Theodore Roosevelt actually said was comparison is the thief of joy. But that idea of comparing myself to another and finding myself lacking, I'd done it my whole life, and here it is, Ricky Byers, I'm never going to be as good as. That quote came back to my mind, comparison is the death of joy. And at that moment, I got a message from God. I don't know another way to say it. It wasn't a voice from on high that I heard audibly. It wasn't in words, but it was a transmission from a place of such deep truth that I received in my heart. And if I were to put it into words, it would be this: Michael, I'm seeking to give you an experience of your life that is complete joy, uniquely yours. And when you compare it to another, you shut it down. I had in that moment what we used to call in the Pentecostal church the conviction of the Holy Spirit. I was convicted. What that means is I saw the error of my way clearly. And it was heavy. That's when we get that spiritual conviction, it's not like, oh, joy. It's like, oh, man, what am I doing? And I had a graceful moment where I could say no more. And I made a choice that I would be who I am from this day forward. We don't need another Ricky Byers. That position has been filled. But God needed a Michael Gott to show up. Ricky's going to be here November 3rd, by the way. This is going to be great. So, for Celebration Sunday. So what's this all about? I'm telling a lot of my story. I've been enamored of storytelling lately, and I told John I have some trepidation. I've been, sharing some stories from Native American tradition, from Greek myth, from the Hebrew scriptures. And I haven't been talking a lot about me lately. It's a little scary being vulnerable, and I hope that you saw that. There's a lot of love coming this way, and there's a lot of love going this way. That wherever you are in your journey of healing your critical thinking and your self-judgment, there are people who will love you, who do love you, just as you are. Yes, you're going to make mistakes. Yes, you're going to drop the ball. And we're here, and we're not going away. I'm supposed to stop speaking now. Last thing. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says this: the most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep, loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen. And Hafiz says this: one day the sun admitted, I am just a shadow. I wish I could show you the infinite incandescence that has cast my brilliant image. I wish I could show you, when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your being. I love you. God bless you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.